Ooh, why is my screen not big? There you go. I just had a moment there where I think I've accidentally blocked myself in the chat. I was clicking on people that were being a little bit naughty and trolling, and I can add you to the block list like that. And when I block you in certain ways, you're done. And you can very quickly, if you mess about, you can end up having your YouTube account blocked by YouTube, your Google account blocked by Google, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Meta, so Facebook and Instagram, and I don't block people usually. I mean, I don't mind them, saying stuff. It's an open, conversation. But if you go around and tell me that you're using a cracked version and then say things like, "Oh, why should I pay for the product?" then what's going to happen is that our compliance people, yeah, Xando is now apologising. Please don't block me, he says. And I was only joking. I understand. Yeah, don't joke about cracks, okay? A cracked software, because for the software industry, it's a massive, massive problem. Um, as a company, we lose millions sometimes through piracy, and Idera, who are a parent company, own 20 or 30 companies, and they are billions and billions of dollars involved. Now, when you get to the point where someone like Idera is talking about billions of dollars and their main product is software, you can guarantee they have a company or a department or a bunch of departments actually around the world whose only job it is to pursue cracks, pirated versions, and abuse of licenses, and they will do it. Now, I am sympathetic to people who are in economies where, you know, the balance of US dollar to whatever your currency is difficult, and I absolutely get it. I totally get it, and on a personal level, I'm sympathetic, but the company cannot afford to be sympathetic, and if you use a cracked version and they catch you doing it, they'll come for you, and I don't want that. So, you know, there's a community edition out there, and by the way, pay attention to community edition regulations as well, because that light's doing something weird. I'm just going to do it like that. There you go. The community edition's got some rules about income as well and things like that. So it's just pay attention to those. Zando's saying lots of backpedaling now. It's okay, dude. I get it. Okay, just don't make jokes. All right, because you can be in some serious trouble. Right, so I can't reply to your chats until later on when I go back and remove people off my block list. Good morning from sunny Campbell River, Canada. Canada. The salmon capital of the world, not the color. I'm guessing this the fish. And hola a todos de Grecia. I have started learning Portuguese so I can understand videos about Delphi. Yes, hello Sakis, Yasu, my friend. There's so many developers in Brazil. It's outstanding, and that's why he says Portuguese, because Brazilians speak Portuguese and they're absolutely everywhere. Frank says hi from Welland in Belgium. Hello. And by the way, Xando, I will go back and look at the block list later and remove people that have had a bit of a timeout and maybe can come back. Okay, so hang on and we'll see where we're going. Martin says hello, Ian B. Hello, and Giuseppe says hi. And Francis, who I was talking about you the other day with someone else. Yeah, I forget who it was now, but we're just discussing your project. Actually, it's very interesting. Terry, my app was falsely detected as having a virus a few years ago. It took Microsoft several months to concede the case, republish my app. Good. I have some good news for you, because today's webinar has something like 40 slides. It's a very comprehensive webinar, so I'm not going to hang about. I'm going to get into it quickly, but there's a couple of things you can do to help. And also, I got my own personal recommendation for what to do if you get detected as a virus. I actually personally wouldn't recommend going to Microsoft unless you absolutely have to, because there are better ways of doing it. I'm going to talk about that. I love you, and I'm sorry for trolling. Xander, I get it. I understand. It's okay. It's okay. It's going to be okay. Malcolm says, hello, Ian. And Ogare says, hello from Nigeria. Okay, so thank you, Ian. I'm sorry, sir. Yes, but dude, calm down. I'm not evil. Hi from Hungary, and also hi from Germany. Well, we've rounded up nearly all the countries of the world so far. We are in at least 26 countries, and many of you joined for the webinar, so I really, really appreciate it. I've had some emails even today. I've had 4 or 5 emails from people. Ken Mayer, or Ken Meyer, I think probably catches up on replay, I think he said. But Ken, thank you for your email. It was a really nice email, and I do invite you. I say this all the time to people that I know that sometimes, particularly when we've just released a product like we did last week, because if you are living under a rock or something, 12.3 is available now. But sometimes we have a few glitches when we release things. It's an immense task. I know it looks like you just go, well, why can't you just get it all right? And that's true. We should get it all right, and we are striving to do things right. But sometimes there's a few little issues here and there, and we try and cover those with hot fixes and things like that, which appear in Get It Package Manager. But if there's something that you really like in the product and is disappearing, or we've mentioned we're going to get rid of it, or you've got a great suggestion, and people do come up with great suggestions about the product, or you just want to moan and say, this problem, I was told it was going to be fixed, I've told blah, 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 or it's been around for ages, or you just generally want to talk about development, you can email me. Please do. People do email me all the time. In fact, Monday mornings, I spend a couple of hours probably answering emails, because my job is developer advocate. My job is to talk to other developers, you guys and girls, and also convey what the company is putting out, obviously, and describe the products and using our products, but more importantly, get feedback from you and make sure that your voice is heard. Okay, not like Microsoft, as was it Terry? I forget who it was. Sorry, yeah, Terry. Not like Terry, who tried to get hold of Microsoft. It's very difficult to get hold of the right person. It's just a very big organization, a lot of moving parts. But Embarcadero, and make it absolutely clear that whenever you see one of us doing these things, we always put our own email addresses. That goes to me. I haven't got a secretary, it's me. And I will reply. I'm sometimes very, very busy, and I can't always reply instantly, but generally within the hour, and generally the next day at the latest. So, come ahead and do it. Lots and lots of people. So 12.2 to 12.3 upgrade. Okay, well, let's answer this question now, because we're live, and then we'll get into the main part of the webinar in a moment. Okay, 12.2 and 12.3 cannot exist on the same machine. The reason is that point releases, so X dot point something, so 12.1, 12.2, 12.3, live in the same place. So when you install 12.3, it will detect 12.2 and then will automatically remove it. Okay. Now, when you do that, there's a question that comes up that says, do you want to keep your registry settings? I suggest you say yes, don't remove them. If you do that, if you keep your registry settings and upgrade from 12.2 to 12.3, life will be a lot smoother, because all of the things you had installed before, all of your setup, or all sorts of things will continue to work the way it did in 12.2. You just now have 12.3 with all the bug fixes that are in it and all the new features and things like that. So they can't live side by side, but as long as you say, keep my registry settings when you do the upgrade, life will be a lot more swimmingly. We are looking at how we do the installs to try and make it smoother. and quicker. But right now, it must uninstall the previous point version. So if you had 12.0, 12.1, or 12.2, when you install 12.3, it needs to uninstall whatever that one was. So, and by the way, you can't have CE in a trial version installed at the same time. Hans Martin says, I had this problem with false positive yesterday at the customer side, so I put the EX in virus total, nothing found. The customer's Microsoft Defender and said it's Trojan. In fact, one of my slides is all about virus total. It is very frustrating, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Jeff says upgrade, yes. Okay, don't put it. Actually, I disagree. You should put it on virus total because they send samples that make it. Actually, I'll talk about this in my slides because it's much more sensible than that. There are some ways around it. Hi, all from sunny southern England. Hi, some users of the app have the same problem, blocked by attack surface reduction. Some users in the same company don't have the same problem. Yeah, it's very frustrating, and you can blame the hackers and the virus writers for this. It's an arms race, you know. Just when you've got a really good virus protection, the virus writers find a way around it, or they find some 0-day, vulnerability, and then the virus people, antivirus people, have to play leapfrog, and it's like this. And so, as you can see, the more you go up, the more complicated it gets for the antivirus people, because the fine line is you want to block as many bad guys as you can without affecting the good guys, and it's very difficult. I used to write antivirus software years ago, back in the early 90s, and I wrote it in C because we had to do it at a very low level, but there was a vulnerability in Windows that we exploited, funny enough, and DOS, and that's how we wrote our antivirus. Now, I don't work for that company anymore. I haven't done for years, but I know how difficult it is. Nowadays, with XDR, EDR, machine learning, it's very likely apps will be detected as malware. Yes, absolutely, Ronald. That's the problem. That it's more likely you'll end up with a problem at some point. The question is, do you want to remove? Yeah, I know. It's a problem. Hi from Agadir again. Hello, Adele. Giuseppe says, I had the problem in the past, but with some action, I mitigate the problem. Waiting to find out if I did it the correct way. Well, there's more than one correct way, and I'm only going to go through a couple of them. So, I have an idea or a conspiracy theory. Great. Yeah, it's I don't think it's I mean, the trouble is that you don't really know what's going on with antivirus, do you? It's a black box. I mean, there are open source antiviruses, but the problem is that then allows the virus writers to, sort things out. Italy says we have the same problem, and Giuseppe says I had the problem of false positive in the past, but for some action I mitigate the problem. Waiting to know if I did it the correct way. Yes, and Tsuge says maybe it's not a false positive alert. Well, actually, when it's a heuristic virus detection, it quite often is a false positive. If you know that everything else is okay, heuristic detections are quite often false positive, because heuristic is another phrase for I guessed based on my learning. I learned what a virus looks like a virus, smells like a virus, tastes like a virus, it's a virus. Well, not necessarily, actually, and that's the problem with heuristics. They're as only as good as a good guess, and that's it. So let's, without further ado, let's go into talking about security in general, which is what I'm going to do now. Just to say my usual chat, which is that when I'm running my slides, I can't actually see the chat window. So I might look, I'm probably looking weird at the moment because I'm like dragging things around. You're probably thinking, what on earth is you doing? But I can't always see what's going on. So you sort of ask whether to remove it completely from the registry. Yes, and the answer is say no. say no, Martin. Okay. If you want, I mean, you can choose, but that's how I do it. It works fine for me, and I install it a lot, as you can imagine. Okay, so let's get on with the webinar because, as I said, I've got a lot of slides for this, and I think it's a topic 12.2 to 12.3. Is it binary compatible? Ask Zachary. Yes, they are binary compatible. For example, third-party add-ons, yes, although 12.3 has got a 64-bit IDE. The 32-bit IDE guaranteed absolutely you will be able to use the same add-ons and everything in your 12.3 32-bit IDE, but they need to work slightly different. They have to have a 64-bit version for the 64-bit IDE. Most of them do work, so it's got okay, why mostly or only Windows Defender? Actually, we'll talk about that in a moment. Just say no, says Zachary. Worked for me. Yes, exactly. Okay. All right, so let's share my screen. And whilst we're sharing my screen, let me, where's that screen not looking right? Oh, I see. And whilst we're doing that, let's hide me and let's embiggen my screen share like that. Okay, cool. Right, so today's webinar is the usual thing, 30 for 30 webinars. Why do we say 30 for 30? Because on February 14th this year, it was the 30th anniversary of the release of Delphi. So it's been around for 30 years. I bought it on the very first day it came out, and I've used Delphi ever since then. It's fantastic. Martin's arguing about the terminology. Dude, just say no to the question. It doesn't matter what it says. Trust me. Okay, so let's talk about today's webinar. Today's webinar is help. My app is being detected as a computer virus. And believe me, I get emails that say that. I've probably had 3 in the past month that have said virtually the same wording. And for those of you who are new to this, and I know some of you are, who am I? My name is Ian Barker, and I'm the Embarcadero Developer Advocate. You can email me, and please do, at ian.barker@embarcadero.com. You can also read about me at about.me/Ian Barker. Today's slides will eventually be up on the blog, and you can find that. At the moment it's going to go to the products page, but if you go to tinyurl.com/ibvirus30, it will take you to the right place where you can see today's slides and links and everything. But we're a bit behind, but right now it'll just take you to the products page. So help, my app is being detected as a computer virus. Well, first of all, what if you really do have an infective app that you've distributed? Well, it's going to be a bad day at the ranch, I would say. And the reason is that, you know, your best advice, things are finally just right. You made everything look awesome. Your app is working fine. Users love your product and services. It's a success and everything's going great. And then all of a sudden, boom, one of your customers begins to send in, one by one, your customers begin to send in the same story. You have been exploited in some way. It could be a supply chain attack. It could be that you've had a virus that's dormant. It could be that you've got a trojan or something like that. Or even worse, you've got some kind of link in your app that's going to now a site that's been subverted, a website. And the whole network's compromised it, and they blame you. You know, hey, is it going to affect me? Well, yeah. It really is. According to the 2021 Thales Threat Report, almost half of US companies, suffered a data breach in the previous year. And the real number is probably higher because people don't lie, you know, they lie a bit, or they keep it quiet and hope that nobody notices, or they're told by a government somewhere to keep quiet because it has an effect on internal security. For example, if you're a bank, it's entirely possible that the government will, you know, the security services of the government will say, keep it quiet until we're ready, because if it's a bank or a health service or a, you know, hospital or something like that, it could have a negative impact on the whole company, the country's economy. So it's really, it's a weird thing. And things have increased. The scale is increased according to Thales, the frequency is increased, and the sophistication of those attacks have increased as well. And what can you lose? Well, potentially everything. In Europe alone, if there are a breach detected, then they have fines of up to 1.1 billion euros. Now, let's be clear. If you are a small one-person business and you're turning over, 10,000 euros a year or something like that, it's probably not going to be a billion-dollar fine. But even if it was the average penalty, which is 630,000 euros, and that's the average, then you could be in some deep doo-doo. And that's the average GDPR fine. So that's not even for a virus breach. It is a mishandling of data, like personal data or something like that. So it's a really bad problem. And these are the 2021 figures. Well, it's 4 years on from then, and they've increased by a lot. And actually, most countries now, even the ones that had a slightly, should we say, more relaxed approach to copyright protection, for example, China, historically, copyright protection in China was a different. They just did things differently, shall we say? And even they have introduced some quite significant fines and rules for companies that breach the people's data and stuff like that. The main reason is, of course, they want to be global players, and really, if the whole team around the world are issuing fines and worrying about these things, then even people like the Chinese government, who are obviously, they've got over 1 billion people in their country, have to stick with it. Rick likes my phrase, deep doo-doo. Yes, exactly, indeed. 1.1 billion euros, I would definitely be ankle deep or more in doo-doo. So here's some sources. I'll put, like I say, the blog will have these links in about what's going on. But there's a whole bunch of stuff to make you never, ever sleep again if you're a software developer. And it's all about, what happens if your supply chain is breached. And I'm going to talk about what I mean by that in a moment. But also how you mishandle data. If you don't handle data and don't do things like encryption at rest. If you saw my webinar last week, where we were talking about interbase, that encrypts data at rest. It's one of those things that you have to do now for GDPR and various compliance. But there's a whole bunch of terrifying, sleep preventing information. And also there's even more when you think that is it. Well, there's actually 30 odd data breach statistics to make it clear that this is not FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. In other words, convincing you to buy something. And actually, I'm not convincing you to buy something today, trust me. But it is to make it clear that this is a very, very, very real problem. If you are going to make money, Jeff says, more like hip deep. Yes. If I got a bill for 1.1 billion euros, I think that would be an accurate description of how I would be located, shall we say. But yeah, I wanted to make it clear that this is not just some idle threat. I'm not making this up. If you breach the data protections rules as a professional software developer, but even as a doing it as a hobby or something like that, if you've got a widely used app, and it doesn't have to be that widely used, but enough that it draws attention, then you can be in some big problems. As I said earlier on, hip deep doo-doo. And it's not good. So have I terrified you enough now? Because I certainly have terrified myself. And just in case, just to put the final nail in the coffin, there were 18,378 vulnerabilities reported in 2021. Now, obviously, a lot of these have been fixed. But as I said at the beginning of this webinar, it's an arms race. People get better at virus detection, and the virus writers get better at writing the viruses. Many viruses now are what the US government terms, I think they call it, they have this cute phrase for it, a nation oh, I can't remember how they, but basically what they're saying is some country around the world who we don't like is sponsoring the attack. And so they, they've got a whole list. The American government got a whole list of people they think are responsible. But really, the problem is that there's big money in doing this. Cryptoviruses and crypto locker viruses in particular used to be much bigger than they are now. They are becoming less prevalent just because the governments have done things to try and solve the problem as well. But only I think last year or the year before last, some very big national health hospitals and trusts were attacked by a crypto virus that basically took them down and took out all their systems, and they were not able to combat it. And there are laws now in the US and the UK and Europe that mean that if you are attacked like this and you're a public body or you receive public money, then you actually have to admit it and not pay the fine, the ransom. So even if thinking, well, that's okay, we'll just pay the ransom because they're only asking for $250 or something. If you do that, in many countries, you're actually committing quite a serious criminal offence, which is weird. But hey, you could argue it's self-defence, but that government doesn't care. So that's really about vulnerabilities. But let's talk about some other problems. Okay. So first of all, what if your app isn't covered by a virus? It hasn't got a virus in it, and several people in the comments today were making that point clear that actually they don't have a virus, and yet the antivirus said you have. Now you would say, oh, that doesn't happen very often, but actually, the false positive will still be a bad debt ranch for you. And you would say, okay, well, maybe it's just because my little app is only used by 7 people and a cat who trips on the keyboard. But actually, OBS, which is a very, very popular broadcast software, I don't actually use it for what I'm doing here today, but OBS is very, very well respected. They actually had a comment that I saw. This was 46092 was the comment. And OBS Studio, which is a very well-respected application, was in the past detected and blocked by an antivirus. Now, in this particular case, this has been resolved a long time ago, but it was by 360 Total Security as one of those antivirus apps there. Now, if you look at the name of the risk there, what it seems to have detected, you'll see that it begins with the HEUR. This is your worst enemy because this means it's a heuristically detected malware. What is heuristics? Well, it's a kind of dumb version of artificial intelligence. And what it does is it goes and looks at lots of different viruses out there, genuine viruses, and it tries to detect patterns of behavior rather than a signature, because a lot of viruses have very specific signatures, and you can go and look for a string of text that the virus puts up, like, I don't know, haha, your hat, and let's say that's virus number bad day 1. They can look for the string of that in your executable, and if it says haha, your hat, then it'll go, oh, you're infected with that virus because there's some other things around it. But the virus writers are getting very good, and they make their code alter themselves, change themselves, and it's called self-modifying code. Or they do a thing called obfuscation. So when they infect your executable, the infection itself is different every time, a bit like a virus, like the COVID virus and cold viruses change as they mutate. Well, the same happens with some of these viruses. In order to detect that, the virus writers can't really look for signatures because the signatures change each time per infection. So they use a thing called heuristics, and it's a set of rules that look at your executable and take a best guess based on what they've seen on thousands of other real genuine infections and go, you know what? It looks like this executable is probably infected. And that is where it all goes horribly wrong for you. Because as soon as they do that, and I'm going to sneeze just 1 second. There you go. Muted my mic. That was good. But Dark Filtro says, note to self, do not put the string value of, ha, you're hacked in the application. Yeah, that's one way of getting around it. You'll never have a problem after that, Doug. You'll be fine. But anyway, yes, as soon as you get triggered by this heuristic detection, which I think is a really irritating bit of logic, really, then it just goes, well, you're probably infected, and this is the malware that we think you're infected with. Of the ones I've seen that are false detections, and I've seen probably 20 this year as I've been working doing things, they've all been heuristic detections. The good news is heuristic detections actually block a lot of real viruses and make it very hard for a virus writer to get away with it. The bad news is your own app might end up getting blocked, which is a big problem. So, what are the symptoms? Because sometimes you don't even know that your app is being blocked by an antivirus. Well, first of all, the obvious thing is that, and the great thing is, users never tell you they saw some kind of message pop up. Okay, they just go, your app isn't working, and it's not working. I downloaded it, I installed it, it's not working. I want my money back. What they failed to tell you is that they saw an antivirus message pop up that says, hello, this app looks like it's been infected, and then zooms it away into the system tray, never to be seen again. But there are some other symptoms that you get with technical support questions, which is my app runs and then it immediately closes. And the reason is that your app is doing something like self-replicating code or shifting some things around, and the antivirus goes, whoa, that's suspicious behavior, man. Bang, and cuts you out. The other thing can be that you install your app, but the app has disappeared. And the reason is that the antivirus has quarantined your newly installed app and put it away somewhere secret and safe so that you can't run it. And actually, when you go to search for it, you can't find it anywhere because most of the quarantined apps actually change the name of the file and put it somewhere where your normal search routines, you know, can't find it. Ronald says the problem continues. Acronis, Cyber Protect, detect XE malware. Yes, exactly. Um, it happens. The other thing that can happen that is a kind of bad smell about antivirus is doing something horrible to you. Your installer is blocked by the web browser. I'm going to go into that in detail in a moment. And literally says this is not a trust app. No way, you can't install it. Well, there's ways around that, which we'll talk about in a moment. And the other thing is the app, it runs and it looks like it's running fine, but it can't find anything like its databases or images or fonts. And the reason is that the app has been put into a little sandbox somewhere. So it's going to go, all right, well, I'm going to let you run, but I'm not going to let you see anything on the system. You can't get any of your databases or load anything external, but I'm going to allow you to run. And Jeff says my LibreOffice keeps disappearing too. Yes, exactly. It's a problem. Meanwhile, we're just going to block this person and get rid of them because they are idiots. We do not care about your spammy stuff that you're trying to sell me. The app runs, but it's unable to find things. So yeah, it's a problem. And by the way, just so we're clear, this screenshot that you see here is one of my own apps being battered by malware bites. But I really genuinely recommend, personally, not the company, but personally, I recommend malware bites because I use it for everything and it's very, very good. Salut Einstein, hello from Nantes in France. So this is actually a scan of my own machine, and the app that it was scanning was this one. And this is an example app that I put up on GitHub, and I can guarantee it does not have a virus in it. All it does is it just shows you how to implement rounded corners on the dialog box. Okay, so it's this is a screenshot from Rad Studio 12.3, and you can see it's a fairly straightforward app. And in fact, the source code for it is this. It's what, 12 lines of code? Not even that, I don't think. And the antivirus goes, no, it's a virus. It's not a virus. It's actually calling a API call that is a perfectly reasonable, perfectly valid a Windows API call from a unit called Delphi Rounded Corners, and I wrote that as a helper class, I think, and you just point it to point a format it and say set rounded corners, and then what it'll do is it'll round the corners of your executable. And the weird thing is, even though Malwarebytes had previously detected that as a virus, I run it again another day, and now it's working absolutely fine because I recompiled it, and same code, nothing changed, different day, and the app's allowed to run unmolested. Go figure. And the reason is that obviously I keep my machine fully patched at all times, and at some point in a couple of days, it had gone. Okay, I know I called this was a said this was a virus, but it wasn't really a virus. And by the way, it did not restore the version that it detected back from the quarantine once it decided it was okay. It just looked at the version I've written and said, "Yeah, yeah, I made a mistake. This is fine. This is cool. This one's cool. It's the same piece of code. You can match it byte for byte in a hex compare, a diff editor, and it's exactly the same piece of code, same file, same contents in every single way. One day it hates it and quarantines it, and another day it goes fine. And the other problem you'll get is one of the things I talked about, which is your web browser can get in the way and start saying, "Wait a minute, your customers are trying to download a virus." Now, this happens a lot. I had someone the other day submit something for Get It, and I'm one of the people that reviews what's in the Get It submissions. I'm not the only one, but I'm one of them. And this particular version was submitted, and Canute says he got a false positive and no problem after a restart. Yeah, you know why, Canute? Because I think after you restarted, what happened was the antivirus updated because they normally update on the restart. It's weird, isn't it? But anyway, your web browser now can be helpful in inverted commas too. And this one particular person had said, "Oh, here's my submission. It was an executable." Now, this is not the executable. This is one of my own that I've deliberately triggered to make it block. But this person has submitted this get it submission, and you know, uh, Xando says, when you guys make a new version of the IDE, do you have to get in contact with all the antivirus to make sure the new compiler does not get detected? Actually, no, we don't. I know that they submit bits of it to the virus writers, and then it's trusted. And I'm going to talk a bit more about that in a moment because there are ways you can make your own stuff a little bit more trusted, but not guaranteed. But anyway, here is my app being downloaded. It's from a genuinely clean, uninfected app. The only difference was it's signed, code signed with a thing called a OV certificate instead of an EV certificate. And this particular version of the app had not been downloaded very often. So Microsoft Edge goes, okay, well, um, I'm not going to really just let you download it. So you have to go 5 steps to fix this. And someone's trying to ping me on my phone. So I'm just going to block that and say, I'm busy, go away, do not disturb. There you go. Until I turn it off, go away. So it takes 5 additional steps. Okay. So the first thing you've got to do, keep. Then you have to say, are you really sure about this? Because, this executable is signed and it's signed by this publisher, but, we don't know who they are. We're not really trusting them, even though it's a proper code certificate. And, you're definitely sure because this would be a very bad idea. And, we're not certain of this. And, well, by the way, now you've downloaded it, are you sure you want to run this? You do? Okay, well, good. I've checked 3 times. So, oh, by the way, I was just joking. I'm still going to say you can't run it because, the default is to say don't run it, even though it's code signed, even though it's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Your antivirus didn't kick up a fuss about it, but no. Microsoft's Defender Smart Screen is going to make a fuss about it. Okay, you sure? You sure? You clicked on the extra step to say you're absolutely sure. Well, good luck. Click on run anyway. Bye bye to your machine. But actually, it's not. It's not bye bye to your machine. So, how do we overcome that? Well, first of all, and you're not going to like this, and that is to use code signing. Now, weirdly enough, that executable that's come down from the browser is code signed, but it's code signed using an OV certificate. The only way to overcome that particular problem is wait until enough people have downloaded it. Um, the other thing you can do is download it multiple times, that executable. If you do it enough times, you will not get that message. Okay, you won't get that message. It will go, you know what, we've scanned it enough times. But until you do that with an OV certificate, it is going to do that the first time. Once it um, gets to have looked at that executable enough, and it's about between 5 and 15 times that it's been downloaded, then it will suddenly go, you know what, we're good. The reason is that the smart scan sends a little bit of a hash, a signed hash up to a server and says, is this something that has been downloaded multiple times before? And it does that during the code signing problem. And actually, Nessa, I'm talking about this at the moment. Is it Nessa? Yeah, Pestle. Um, but if you download it often enough, eventually they will get the message, but it's a pain in the neck. If you use a certificate type called an EV, extended valuation code certificate, the validation code certificate, then it will probably not do this straight away. It actually, EV is more difficult to get, extended validation, but it's now become a lot easier, as I'm going to talk about in a moment. If you use an EV code signing certificate, you will probably resolve the problem. And as Haito says, one of our regulars, we got an EV certificate last year and it solved the problem. Yes, that is most people's experience. I have found one person who still had a problem, but an EV certificate is much more expensive than an OV certificate. The only way around it, if you've got OV, is to just download it or get people to download it multiple times. I would recommend a beta test group or something like that. Give them the steps that I showed you. Click on here, click on there, click on there, and then it will go away. Now, what is a digital signature? Well, if you're not sure, and I'm going to show you how this works in a moment, if you right click on your executable, on a signed executable, and select properties, amongst the tabs is one that says digital signatures. If you click on there, you'll see a thing that says embedded signatures. And yes, Giuseppe, I'm going to talk about the costs in a moment. But if you click on the digital signatures, it will say the name of the signature if it's got a certificate in there. And then you can go through and you can say, okay, show me some more details about the signature. Now, how do I sign it? Well, there's two ways of doing it. You can either sign it on the command line, and in fact, just above there where it says that you buy the certificate, and I'll tell you where to buy it in a moment. And it's not, by the way, nothing to do with us. We don't sell certificates. But you can either use the command line where it says sign tool there. You can get that from the Windows site. Just Google sign tool and Windows. Microsoft will tell you where to download it. I'm not going to give a URL because it changes. It's part of the Windows development kit. But Google sign tool and you get it. You then give it a signature and pass it the path of your executable, and you can see rounded corners example. And then now with the way that it works now, it will come up with a token password. The reason is that there is a hardware token that you need with this particular. Nowadays, you actually have to have a hardware token. You used to be able to store them locally on your drive or on a network drive, but now it has to be stored on a secure token. When you do that and put your password in for your secure token, it will go away and sign it. The other thing you can do is you can use a thing called a build event. Okay. Now, I'm not. By the way, yes, a Schneider Infosystems. Oh, hello there, Christoph. You can use timestamps when you use a signing tool. Yes, you should always use a timestamp, and the reason is that it tells the user when you actually signed that executable. There is a difference between the standard code signing certificate and the EV code signing certificate by a higher cost. Yes, I'm going to talk about that all in a minute. High test is what happened to us with the EV is that the Windows Store rejected the install and support told us that the certificate fingerprint needed a little more time to not be a false positive. Wow. So anyway, the you can use a thing called post build events. Okay. Now, not a lot of people know about build events in general. You can. Did you know that you can run cool things on the command line when you build your app? What you do is you right click on your project and set properties, and then you go down to, yeah, and this dialog appears, go down to build events, and then you can run things when either you're before your build starts. So let's say, I don't know, you're gonna resize a bunch of graphics or some other thing that the IDE doesn't do, or even, you know, do a git pull or something like that, and you're going to pull down some resources that you've got on GitHub. You can do that in your pre-build event, and you can run things like batch files or you know, shell scripts and PowerShell scripts and so on and so forth. But once you've finished the build, you can then run a thing called a post-build event, which is how I would do it. And that is that you run the same command line that I showed you in the previous screen. You remember this one where there's a Windows terminal command line. So you run that same command line there in the post-build event. And that will go off and that will create a code sign certificate in your executable. And that will help you with 99% of all your problems. Not all of them, but 99% of them. Now, it used to be, when I talked about code signing certificates in the past, that you didn't need a hardware key. You could just go off and purchase one. I used to recommend K software because they were very, very good. And it was cheap with K software. They were probably the cheapest ones I could find. I've got some different alternative places now because K software, I think, have stopped. But it used to be you just got your certificate delivered to you. It was a bit clunky. You had to install it via Internet Explorer. I'm not kidding, and not Edge. Oh no, had to be Internet Explorer or Safari on the Mac. And you would install it and download it, and then you had a file, a .pfx file, which was your code signing certificate. But now, as of early 2024, late 2023, you now actually need a physical USB key, and that key's a secure key. And as you saw earlier, you get that message box come up and say, oh, you need to put in your password. Okay, you are basically practically required. Now I'm going to talk about some ways around this, because there are some cloud services that mean you don't need to do this, but most people I know use this form of code signing now. And how does that work? Well, the big problem is because of that USB memory stick or that USB secure key, there's an additional step that you have to type in the password. And for a lot of people, this was a real pain in the neck. I'm going to use the word neck. And they would find that if they were building, you know, a whole package. I mean, I have one build that I do, not for Embarcadero actually, but one build I do that's got 84 things that need to be signed. And until you spot it, you would have to type in that password 84 times, which of course is like, you know, trying to walk to the moon. It takes you forever, and you've had enough by about the 23rd time. So, hello, Patrick. Salut. And I can recommend you as my pro tip. If you use the SafeNet authentication client, there's a setting that says ask for the password once per session, or I think it says per session password. I forget the exact words because it's a while since I set it up. But make sure you tick that and say once per session, because then you only have to type it in once until you reboot the machine or plug the USB key back in again. Otherwise, every time you build everything, you want to sign every single executable, you'll be there for every, you get asked the password every time. Hello, JP, my hero friend from Tourist TLS is in the chat as well. So yeah, make sure you say once per session. Where can you get code signing certificates? Well, don't freak out. I know that's a big number there, but you can, the original OG certificate source used to be or is Sectigo. And Sectigo, they used to dominate the market. They used to be called VeriSign back in the day. And then for some random reason, I don't know why, they changed to Sectigo, which, fine, rebranding, I suppose. Now, as you can see, their certificates are pretty eye-wateringly expensive. And you'll also notice that the cost between the regular certificate that is easier to get and the EV certificate, which is a little bit harder to get, but gives you much more likelihood that you will not ever see that browser, message, oh, unknown publisher, download, is only $70 in it. In fact, $69 difference. And that's a sign of how things got complicated at the end of 23, beginning of 24. But even so, $500 US dollars is a lot of money for a code signing certificate. Now, the good news is there are some cheaper alternatives. For example, Global Sign, which is the one that I used, is actually basically half that price. And hello, good morning from El Salvador. Hello, Carlos. And as Patrick recommends as well, Komodo, who are the other people as well. Komodo is another supplier. But I found that Global Sign was the one at the time I bought that certificate and key. It was the cheapest one. Now, luckily, someone else was paying, so I didn't have to shell out nearly $300 of my own money. And also, the person that was paying bought a 5-year certificate. So they saved even more money. I think that's when you get $289, that's for a 5-year term or something like that. But if you really want to do it properly, then you should go for the more expensive extended validation. And what's the difference between standard validation and extended validation? The standard validation, you need to provide some proof of who you are. And if you're an individual, it can actually be relatively difficult to do that. You need to have some established website or something like that. If you are a trading as name in the UK, or if you're a trading as, I suppose, is the same term in the United States, or whatever, an individual person, then being able to prove who you are is actually quite hard. They will ask you for some form of ID, and you'll need to send it to them like a passport or driving license ID, and it takes a while. I think it took a week to get the code signing certificate for me, and I was well established, well known, and I already had credentials that they had around. They'd already got my credentials. I don't understand why it took so long, and in the end I complained and they got it fixed within 2 hours. Funny that, isn't it? So I think I sat in a queue somewhere, and somebody went, oh, okay, yeah, we should do something because he's complaining. But yeah, it was a problem. Extended validation, you will need to prove who your company is, and they will go and do some various background checks to make sure that you are definitely who you say you are, that you're not associated with any criminality and things like that, that you're not trying to impersonate someone. That's why it costs more money, because it actually takes some more effort to do. If you can afford it, you really need to go for the EV type certificate instead of the OV certificate. And Giuseppe says, can I sign more than one software with Global Sign? Yes, you can. You can sign I sign many different apps with the signature, so not a problem. But the good news is there are some other options as well. The lowest price option I could find was at ssl.com, and that was literally the lowest I could find. Now, I haven't gone into this, and also I'm not actually really giving an endorsement to any of these companies, you know. But and Val Mad, yeah, Val Mad says DigiCert is another option. Yes, indeed they are. But anyway, when I was looking just before while I was preparing this webinar, the one that I found that was the lowest price option was from SSL.com. And they also do a cloud-based signing, which I think is probably really very attractive. And the reason is it doesn't need that USB key. Now, I don't know anything about this service. I've never used it. For all I know, they could be horrendously unreliable. Um, you know, by the way, I'm not suggesting they are, but what I'm saying is they could be, because I don't know. I don't know if they're good or bad. But that was the one that I found that was the lowest price. Now, there are other options as well for what to do once you code sign. Once you've got a certificate, you know, there are lots of different options there. One of our tech partners called Vsoft has got a really good product called Signator. Now, Vsoft, a lot of people know Vsoft because they have a product called Final Builder. If you've not ever come across Final Builder, and it, you know, depends on your own setup, Final Builder is it's almost like an IDE for building your installers and resources and running a test, and it's a very comprehensive product. I've used it in various software houses I used to work at. I don't use it now because, you know, we have people that do all that nonsense for me in Embarcadero and Idera, but Final Builder is a really good product, and I've got a lot of good things to say for it, and they're a tech partner. Now, Final Builder has a product called Signator. Again, I've never used this, so I don't know if it's any good. I do know Vincent, who is the boss at Vsoft, and he's a good guy, very knowledgeable. But it's just one of the services that's available. What else? Additional resources. Well, you remember I talked about some of those vulnerabilities at the beginning of the webinar, saying some people, you've got your app, it's working absolutely fine, and all of a sudden, bing, something stops working. Okay, and the whole thing's horribly wrong. Well, the reason could be, I think, called a supply chain attack. And it could be that you're using some kind of JavaScript package in your web pages, you know, in your app, or you're using a component that you know is come from somewhere you've never heard of before, but you thought, hey, it does exactly what I want. Or it could be that you are using an installer that pulls in some resources that, I don't know, MySQL drivers or something like that. And it turns out that they've got some vulnerability, or they've got a deliberate vulnerability like a backdoor or virus or trojan. This is called a supply chain attack. And the supply chain attack is where you literally attack some part of the moving bits, the parts of your app, of your installer, of your other ancillary resources like your HTML or your JavaScript. And our tech partner, Scanner, and I'm doing a webinar with them shortly, more about those in a minute. I'm doing a webinar on Saturday with Boyan, more about that in a moment. Boyan Mytov is in the chat. But the healthy package from Scanner is a completely free service. Okay, healthypackage.ai, that is actually a website address. If you go to that, it will search things. Now, it's not tuned to Delphi. It is more for other ancillary things like, you know, you've pulled in some JavaScript or Python libraries or something like that into your app. But go to it and check it out because it's really great. I've got a lot of good things to say about Scanner, and we're doing a webinar together shortly about that as well. And what happens if your code is signed and the antivirus still hates you? Well, someone mentioned this earlier on, but I would recommend that you use VirusTotal to scan it. And the reason is that, first of all, VirusTotal is industry-wide recognized. Everybody knows who they are in the industry, and it's completely free. Totally free service. There's no charge at all, no matter how many things you submit, and it's unbiased. In other words, they don't work for an antivirus software house, and they don't work for a government or something like that. They're just a service. They're not part of Microsoft or Embarcadero or anybody like that. They're completely independent, and it's free and unbiased. If Virus Total does detect something and it's not a heuristic detection, don't panic, okay? But if it is a non-heuristic detection, it's got a proper valid virus, and particularly if you've got like 6 or 7 detections, then you're probably in some serious problems. In which case, you need to have a look at your own machine, put some antivirus on, and scan it, and all the rest of it. But if it doesn't detect anything at all, then it's very likely your package is not infected, your executable is not infected, or your app is not infected, because Virus Total runs checks for multiple websites, multiple antivirus people. But what happens if you do get a false detection? Well, we're going to talk about that in a moment, but submit it to the antivirus people and have a look at it. Now, some other resources. We've got a bonus webinar, which is not on our list of webinars for the 30 for 30. So it technically makes it 31 for 30, but actually we're not really counting because it's on a Thursday, April the 17th, at the same time as today, so noon my time, 5 p.m. Universal time, or 5 p.m. British GMT, sorry. And we're going to go into quality and security a bit more. This is with Valerie Kim. She's a solutions engineer at Scanner. I'm going to go into a lot more depth about what to do, in terms of code quality and code security. They've got a very interesting scanner, and they're producing a little add-in for Rad Studio that will go in and check your code quality. So if you're doing questionable things like storing passwords in your executable in plain text, or you're doing something that possibly violates good practices, then they've got a scanner that will detect all that, which is interesting stuff. So to go back to what I was saying, what do you do if you have signed your code, but the antivirus still hates you? If you're absolutely certain your app or website is not infected, and this does apply to websites as well, because it may be your apps are fine, but your website is being blocked. And I can tell you now, there are some very big names out there that get their websites regularly blocked. Winsoft, who is a very well-known and well-respected and component provider, actually gets blocked by AT&T in the United States, or certainly in the Dallas region. I can't speak for any other part of the country, but they get blocked. And also Malwarebytes blocks Winsoft as well. I've checked them with some other scanners in a different configuration. There's nothing wrong with this site, and it's a false positive. So I have submitted their URL to the relevant places and said, hello, I think it's a false positive, but it's got to be affecting their business, because if you go to a website and it goes bing, this is a bad site, we're not going to let you go there. Are you going to download something from them? No, probably not. Use HTTPS if your website isn't already, because that is the first step to being trusted. And soon you'll be finding it very, very difficult to have a website that isn't HTTPS. Likewise, any URLs or web addresses in your app, embedded in your app, you should always use HTTPS as well, because if you don't, you're probably also going to get triggered. But let's assume that everything's fine, you're absolutely certain you're good. Then go to virustotal.com, and there's a URL at the bottom, although you can search on their help site, docs.virustotal.com/docs. So good they said it twice, /false positive. They have a page there. It tells you what to do, where to go, and how to contribute your executable to be scanned by them and then given the thumbs up. I don't know how they do it. I don't know whether they do some additional testing or whatever. But go there and submit your bits, and it will work. Okay. And that's good. So a lot of questions have appeared whilst I've been doing that, but that's where we're at so far. Like I said, this replay will be up, not now, but soon. tinyurl.com/IB virus 30, because there is going to be a whole bunch of links there that I'm sure you'll have missed. But let's stop sharing. Let's talk about the questions that we have. Embiggen me back on the screen. I'm back because I had a lot of people say things that was very, very good. Okay, so a little bit of chat between Patrick, my good friend Patrick Premata, who is a fantastic MVP, and funnily enough, so is Christoph Schneider, who they're talking to. There's two MVPs chatting away in chat there, and Christoph Schneider from Infosystems, Swiss Corporation. Christoph is a very good guy. He did our opening webinar of the 30th of 30 was by Christoph Schneider about Gemini, which is a brilliant AI-based webinar. But he's saying Vsauce is fine, and Sinus are on fine to build out a classic license for developers. So not a per use one, but a one-off. You know, you pay it and have it for a year and things like that. What else have we got? Okay. So I didn't know this, but apparently SSL Corp, is that who you were talking about, Brian? They charge $1 per sign-in for cloud signing. Well, that's all right, I suppose. I mean, that's relatively cheap. It depends on how many times you need to co-sign things, but you could be doing it quite a lot. I think the bit of planning there about how many times you want to code sign would be a good thing, but it's not. $1 is really quite affordable, I think, in that respect. And whilst we're at it, whilst we're talking about these things, I want to put up put this caption up here. Where are we? Did it really delete my QR codes that I put up? You pain in the neck. Okay. That's very weird. You know, I set up that's a bug in Restream. Well done, Restream, you pain in the neck. Well, just 1 second. Boyan has got a webinar he's going to do with me, and oh, here we go. I can do it. I set it up. That's very annoying. So we're going to call it Boyan live. Right. So not this Saturday, if you're watching this live, but next Saturday at 1:30 p.m. So roughly half an hour from now, whatever time of day it is for you if you're watching this live, come and see Boyan and myself. We're going to do an Internet of Things webinar and talk about Arduino. We're going to program some cool stuff together, or he's going to program it. I'm going to look like I know what I'm talking about. And it's a great thing. You're probably going to receive an email and some social media posts about it. But this is another additional webinar on top of our previous one that we were doing for Der Scanner. So Boyan and myself are going to be live. So someone is scanning that. There you go. It goes to his channel. Click on subscribe on Boyan's thing and click on alert, just as you would to us, and you will get to the right place. What else we got? Giuseppe says some antivirus companies consent to send them the executable through FTP. Great. I mean, the way I've submitted it in the past, when I've had this problem, is I've gone to VirusTotal and they have some links for submissions, and I've scanned it, and then they ask for the upload for executable when you do it. I think you're right. I think I may have submitted it once through some kind of FTP as well, but Yeah, it's very, very good. Rick's off. Thanks. Got to go. Delphi with AI on every desktop. Yes, exactly. Charles says, thank you for the webinar and very timely. Thanks, Charlie. In Aurora. Yes. What else we got? There's some other things. Yeah, Val said this earlier on. DigiCert is another option for these certificates. Yes, there's actually quite. If you search for code signing certificates, you'll actually find you'll get pushed with a whole lot of advertising and lots of sites as well. The ones I mentioned are just ones I've had personal experience of. DigiCert I've also had experience of, which was fine. There wasn't a problem then. I just for the last one, I had to buy. Someone else was paying for it because they needed it. Me to have this signature, and I'm like, well, I don't know, I've got to pay some money, and they're like, we'll pay, and so they paid for my certificate. But which saved me quite a lot of money. But apparently, there's a problem with our blog engine at the moment. Komodo is significantly cheaper than Septigo, says Christoph Schneider. Yes. Okay. I think you're right. And that's the same. I found SSL.com was a very cheap as well. I think Set2Go are probably the most expensive option. I could be talking out of turn. I'm really not trying to say there's anything like that. They're very well known, and they do all sorts of SSL certificates and other things as well. We answered this question during the webinar. Can I sign with more than one software with Global Sign? Yes. I actually have a batch file that does a whole series of executables and apps at the same time. It does like 84 signatures like that. It takes under a second per executable, depending on how big the executable is. So it's going through and doing quite a lot. And also Patrick mentioned Komodo as well. Yes, that's exactly it. I think that's it. Rose said, greetings from your favorite place in the world, Essex. Oh, sorry, Ross. Which is that's funny. I thought for a moment you're an Essex girl, but obviously an Essex boy. But which is just as bad. You know what I mean? I know it says favourite place in the world, Essex, but actually I'm from Woolwich. I was born in East London, South East London, really. But it's close. Not quite Essex, but Essex is all right. You know what I mean? Tweakle. Matthias says, our self-modifying executables survive for years. It patch resale themes, controls at runtime, tools return false. Yeah, actually, do you know, the weird thing is it just depends that I would say that in the past you could get away with doing quite a lot of things that you can't anymore. And the reason is that people have got a lot more sharp about things that there's something you mentioned last time. I said I was from Essex. Okay. Yeah, the reason is that hackers have got more and more sophisticated. In the last 2 years, rogue nation states have really used it as an attack, like almost like a form of cyber warfare. And Windows Server 2019 out of the box is a very harsh environment for executables, and I think there is a trend towards, and this is my personal belief, I've got no evidence to suggest this, that there will come a time, and it's almost there now, where Windows Server will only insist by default that you can run 64-bit executables and nothing else. And the reason for that is that it helps to add to the overall security of the machine, because you don't have to have a thing called a thunking layer, and you don't have to look at different address spaces and all sorts of nonsense like that. Even Android has changed the way that the Android apps work now, so that you can't have certain types of read-only segment and stuff like that, where it can't be manipulated in memory. And on the Mac, it was only probably a year and a half ago to 2 years ago that they started enforcing you having to do some extra clicks to run the executables that you had personally written. And it's getting better now because they have they didn't call it code signing, they call it what's the Mac word for it? Notarization. App notarization is what Apple call it, which is a very good term, but it's a very American term. Over here, if you have a legal document, like you're submitting some paperwork for, I don't know, court case or something like that, you take it to a thing called a notary and you give your ID over. So they go, yeah, that's you. It's your passport or your ID. The notary then stamps it with the notarization stamp and signs it to say that it's really you that signed this document. So Apple's term for code signing is notarization, and it's kind of the same thing. It's saying we've checked this person's credentials, and the one that created this app, this is what code signing certificate is all about. The person that created this app is definitely the person who has code signed it. And so notarization is kind of a good analogy, really, as to what it is. Does it matter which code signing I use? No, there's absolutely no difference. It's either an OV certificate or a EV certificate. Basically, as long as you're using a recognized supplier, and you'll quickly understand which one's which. A certificate is a certificate. It doesn't matter. Now, when you submit your apps to the app Play stores, and I mean the Google Play Store and the iOS App Store and the Mac App Store, a process goes on there where they do the signing for you as you submit your app. So the Mac and iOS do the notarization, as they call it, and that goes up to the App Store. So actually, for mobile and Apple, it doesn't matter who you go to for a code signing certificate because they actually do it for you as part of the submission process, and they scan it and they check, because their scanning on the Play Store and the iOS Store is far more thorough than actually even an antivirus does, because they're looking for all sorts of specific things that an antivirus wouldn't care about, but the rules of the Play Store or the iOS App Store do care about. And so your code signing certificate is no good for that. But for Windows apps, it doesn't matter as long as it's a proper, up to date. In other words, it's not expired code signing certificate. It will work. But so from there. Now there are ways of creating command line, your own command line X509 certificates, as they're called, with OpenSSL. But beyond the scope of what I want to talk about today, because there's lots of caveats to doing that. But if you're going to code sign, and by the way, I've been so sick for the last 3 days, but my voice has held out until just about now. But yeah, if you're gonna do proper, you want your app to be recognized as a valid app, not have that big red horrible warning box or anything like that, then you need code signing certificate. As Terry says, and you're quite right, and I forgot about the Windows Store because I always forget that it exists. But the Windows Store also does the signing on submission. So when you take your app and you submit it to the Microsoft Store, actually they call themselves, it also ignores any code signing certificate and stamps it with their own certificate and says, yeah, we've checked this and it's good. And the reason is that the validation process for actually submitting the app and getting the accounts in the first place is actually significantly more difficult than even getting the code signing certificate in the first place. So they stamp it. When you install an app from the Microsoft Store or the iOS Store or the Play Store, the genuine ones, they've all been scanned and they should be safe. But there is no guarantee of that, particularly with Android and Windows. It's not guaranteed. iOS, there very, very rarely are some apps that are rogue apps that include, as I talked about, supply chain security, some very deeply embedded dodginess to put you in the deep doo-doo, as I said earlier on. But generally speaking, if you install from a genuine app store, then it's going to be okay. Patrick is now telling Terry off, which is great. Food fight, food fight. Throw croissants at each other, I think. Right, but submitting apps to the App Store is more difficult than Apple, in my experience. Now I only send them games. Patrick writes a lot of games, by the way. If you want to follow Patrick, by the way, on YouTube, if you're on YouTube right now, click on his account and click on subscribe. He streams on Twitch as well, Patrick Premater. I haven't got time to do it right now, Patrick, but I'll put your details up at some point. And Javier says, hello from Mexico. Good to be in on one more of your webinars. Well, good news is you've got lots of opportunity to do some more, because rather foolishly I said, hey, do you know what? Let me do 30 webinars to celebrate 30 years of Delphi. And today is number 19. So I've got another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 scheduled ones plus at least 2 extras, and we're probably going to do some more on AI. Bye, Zamo, and no problem. Have fun, and I'll check that block list and take you off. Okay, you're good to go. It's fine. Terry and Patrick are still arguing, but Microsoft only deems your wallet for $19 just once. That is absolutely true, while Apple wants $100 per year. This is also correct. Google also only charge you once, I believe, for a developer account, and so do Microsoft. Yeah, I think that's true. I can't remember how much Google charges, but it was less than $100, I think. And then you get a developer account. But with Apple, Apple Kit is they make some of the best laptops in the world. And I've got an iPhone down there, and I'm seriously considering swapping from my Android phone, which I love. It's an S25 Ultra or some nonsense. I can't remember. It's one of the best ones you can get. Because I'm a developer, mobile developer, but I'm seriously considering swapping back to having a Mac laptop. Behind me there, you can see that's a HP Envy, which I use when I'm traveling. But actually, I'm about to go to Denmark for a 2-day conference, and I want to show some stuff on the Mac. And I'm thinking, you know what? I think I'll trade in my Mac Mini and get a new Mac, but they are very expensive. You pay through the nose for them, and they make you pay for their developer account, which is pretty cheeky, really. You're contributing towards the ecosystem, but they make you pay. There you go, and I'm sure it outweighs the cost. Anyway, I think that's it. So just to remind you, Buoyant Live a week on Saturday. So not this this Saturday. No, sorry, this Saturday. Come along and visit us. Is that right, Brian? Is it 22nd? Yeah, sorry, it's this Saturday. I don't know why I was saying next Saturday. Yeah, come along, go there and subscribe on his channel, or click on the notify me on that live event. We will be broadcasting it through Restream as well, so it will go out to our Embarcadero channels and LinkedIn and Facebook and Meta Live and all the rest of it as well. So pop along. Now, a couple of other things, 2 things. I haven't mentioned the Delphi Summit today, and you know I have to every time. Delphi Summit, delphi-summit.com. Go there. I'll be there in June in Amsterdam at the E-Games Sports Arena, which is incredible. It's completely booked out for us. It's 2 whole days of Delphi stuff and lots of great food, lots of free soda and things like that, and you'll get to hang out with people from the Delphi community. Vincent will be there from Signator or Final Builder. I think Patrick's probably going. I'm not sure if Patrick's going, but I'm sure he'll mention it in the chat. And then me, Marco Cantu, Antonio Zapata, all the names you've probably seen, hang out with us and talk about Delphi, and see some webinars. Come and watch 12.3 in action and a few other things as well, and have fun. So that's at the oh yes, and Boyne's channel, for in case you want it, is youtube.com/Apple at Boyan Mitov. So it's like Bo Ian Mitov, MOT. And actually, it's probably Mitov, isn't it? I'm sorry, Boyan, but it's there. And these, okay, yeah, I get it. So see you all there. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna verse translate that name. I suspect that's something else. Okay, so I think that's it. So Delphi Summit, and the other thing as well is you're going to get another email as well. There's some AI training going on as well. If you are looking to use AI in your apps, and also to see the AI features of RAD Studio, then scan this barcode or take a screenshot and then scan it. And GDK are also the people who are doing the Delphi Summit are also doing AI training as well. It is fabulous. There will be we're sending out an email and some social media about it, but they're touring around the US. So if you're not in the US or you can't get to the US, then it's not going to help. But they're traveling around and doing AI training. It's very, very useful stuff. And Dan says, hello from Romania. Hello, my friend. Lots of Romanian developers. It's very, very good. Small tip is, oh, yes, and this is actually a very good tip, is to set the customer user agent with a TID HTTP request.user agent equals and then whatever. So set it to my app or whatever the name of your app is. And the reason is then when you send HTTP requests, you'll find that you might get detected as a virus. The problem we have is that Delphi doesn't have any dependencies. And the problem with that is that some people write viruses with Delphi. That's how rock solid and reliable it is, that they go off and they write, Trojan horses and viruses with Delphi. And so sometimes that can mean that parts of the runtime library that are in the application can be looking like a virus to the antivirus because they're dumb and they've picked the wrong part of the thing to be a signature, which I totally get. I mean, if you see a tall fat guy with a bald head in the distance, then it looks like me, right? Especially if they're wearing a black t-shirt. Unless, and if it says Embarcadero, it probably is me. But let's say they've just got a black t-shirt and you can't see in the distance. And tall fat guy, up, who's that loud guy over there? And fat guy with a bald head. I bet it's Ian Barker. And when you come up close, like, oh no, sorry, mate, it's someone else. And it's the same thing with the virus detection. That's exactly what it's doing. It's going tall, overweight, bald-headed guy, loud, programmery with a British accent, bound to be Ian Barker. But actually, there's billions of people around that sound and look like me. So that's how it's really that dumb. The antivirus scanning is really that stupid. Looks like Ian, sounds like Ian, got a black t-shirt on, must be Ian, even though it's probably nothing to do with him. Hans is going, bye-bye, Hans. And as Patrick says, we can do anything with Delphi. That's the problem, yeah. You can write viruses with it. I'm not recommending that as an activity. Very quick way to go to jail and get fined. We've had this suggested before. Embarcadero / Idera could become a certifying entity for its users and subscribers. We've had looked into this before, and it's actually not a bad idea. And now that it's possible to have cloud signing, it's potentially possible for us to do some deal with some of those cloud signing people. But the trouble is that it would involve a lot of engineering effort from us to do, and also a lot of admin effort to come up with an agreement with a suitable cloud signing provider. If we tried to do it ourselves, we'd have to maintain an infrastructure. It's a very expensive and complicated infrastructure that's got to be trusted by all the certificate providers. It doesn't mean it's not a no, but it's not the first time someone has said, could we do it? And it's something that we've thought about. So, we'll go from there. Okay. Anyway, look, it's been a while. It's time to go and do something else. For one, my stomach is growling. I didn't have any breakfast this morning, and I'm sick. If you could see my eyes when I woke up this morning, they look like someone had rubbed my eyes with sandpaper. and I'm amazed my voice has held out as long as it has. So it's doing pretty good. So once again, I will see you on Friday. And the webinar on Friday is let's have a look. OAuth 2. What is it and how can you use it in your apps? So we're going to go into a lot more depth than we did before when we did a sending email thing. We're actually going to show you how OAuth 2 works, describe how it works, and then show you some code with it working, actual live coding, and some working examples. And we'll give you some places to download some examples as well. Terry says, Bon appetit. Bon appetit. If you know who Julia Child is, you'll understand. Patrick says, have a good day. See you next Friday for the next webinar. Yes, indeed. Yeah, okay. And Charles says, thank you. Thank you too. And thank you to all of you for watching. I really appreciate it. So Friday, back same time as today. And then on Saturday with Boyan, but we'll have already told you about that, but we'll make sure. If you are watching us on LinkedIn or YouTube, particularly YouTube or Instagram, click on the subscribe button and click on the like button. I don't care about the like, actually. It's more important that you click on subscribe and then that little notify thing that looks like a bell, click on that and say all. The reason is I won't know who you are. I don't get any bonus for doing that. Nobody cares if I get 1 million subscribers or 10. And believe me, nothing will happen. But what will happen is when I do go live for weird webinars you're not expecting, like the Der Scanner one that we were doing out of bandwidth and Boyan's one, you'll get notified when we go live. And it makes a big difference to you because it means then you've heard about it. But even if you can't watch it live, when you next go to YouTube, it'll say, hey, you missed this one. Do you want to see it? And you'll get the replay automatically pushed to you. You don't have to worry about anything. You get told it. That happens on LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. But YouTube, like and subscribe. Like is fine, optional, but subscribe and then click on the little bell that says all alerts. Who else we got? Gracias, Ian. Thank you, Javier. Hasta luego, amigo. Hasta luego to you too. Paolo says, ciao, ciao. Speak to you soon. And Didier says, so good looking for a sick guy. Well, a lot of coffee. That's all I'm saying. That's why I have many medicines to make me feel better. Anyway, I've got to go. Thanks very much.